towards designing intelligent tutoring systems that can better serve the needs of K-12 teachers in addition to their students. I'll first provide some background, followed by a brief case study that reveals ways in which current intelligent tutoring systems may meet some of teachers' needs in K-12 classrooms while failing to meet others. I'll then present a deeper investigation into K-12 teachers' needs for real-time data in blended classrooms. And based upon these findings, I'll discuss some key challenges for future research. So at a high level, the behavior of intelligent tutoring systems can be understood as a feedback loop in which students take actions in a software interface, and the intelligent tutor updates its model of the student's current state, which could include detecting whether the student seems bored at the moment, diagnosing their mastery of certain skills, or whether they have certain misconceptions, and so on. And finally, the intelligent tutor uses this model to decide what to do next. For example, what sort of feedback to give to students in the form of step-level hints, or what math problem to give to a particular student next. So several meta-reviews have indicated that intelligent tutoring systems can enhance student learning in classroom settings when compared with traditional classroom instruction and other forms of educational technologies. However, when running studies in classrooms in the past, we've observed that while using intelligent tutoring systems, students often get stuck in ways these systems simply cannot help with. For example, they may be missing key prerequisite knowledge, or in some cases, they may hold certain misconceptions that are not modeled by the system. So in these cases, we've observed that the teacher in the classroom often provides students with help. The teacher walks around the room and observes their students, and if teachers notice that many students are making similar errors, they sometimes actually stop the whole class on the spot to give a targeted lecture on that topic. The typical response to limitations of intelligent tutors has been to try to automate away these limitations, to make intelligent tutors more self-sufficient and independent. But this talk will instead explore a future in which human teachers and intelligent tutors productively coexist and work together by leveraging each other's complementary strengths and amplifying each other's intelligence. Unlike human teachers, intelligent tutors can be in many places at once and can simultaneously provide multiple students with personalized feedback. But intelligent tutors are also constantly and non-intrusively assessing students at a fine grain size while they learn. So we might imagine that the very same analytics intelligent tutors can generate in real time to drive their own automated interventions could also be displayed to teachers in real time. For example, in this concept image, a teacher is able to view analytics directly on top of her classroom through augmented reality glasses. So on the far left of the image, you can see a ZZZ over one student's head, maybe indicating that they're off task, playing a game in another browser tab, and then switching back when the teacher's nearby. And you can also see some kind of ghostly glowing hands over some students. These are essentially, in this concept, the intelligent tutor asking the teacher for help in a case where it detects that it has a low probability of being able to help the student, given any of its available actions. Prior work has explored similar visions. Over 2 decades ago, for example, Vevey and others proposed extending student modeling to teacher modeling in order to allow intelligent tutoring systems to more effectively help and be helped by human teachers when used in the classroom. However, the choices of analytics presented within existing tools often appear to be influenced more by technical convenience and availability of data collected by systems currently, rather than by an in-depth analysis of K-12 teachers' actual needs. So as a first step towards the design of our own system, we wanted to take a step back and explore K-12 teachers' needs for support in ITS classrooms more broadly. We started by trying to gain a better sense of the ways current intelligent tutors may meet some of the needs of K-12 teachers and fail to meet others. So we interviewed 2 math teachers in the Pittsburgh area who had used ITSs in their classrooms for about 5 years and eventually stopped using ITSs. And Our interviews incorporated a version of a design method called the love letter and the breakup letter, using personification to probe teachers' original reasons for adopting the ITS, using it for an extended period, and eventually breaking up with the technology. According to the interviewed teachers, math teachers at this school had originally pushed to adopt the ITS and its associated curriculum because they felt that their school's existing curriculum involved too much interleaving of topics. These teachers instead wanted to move to a curriculum that teaches each topic only once, making sure that they master it and then allowing both teachers and students to simply move on. Teachers perceived the intelligent tutor to be a system that would achieve this goal, while also helping middle school students transition to the sort of more focused, self-regulated learning that would be expected of them at the high school level and beyond. However, the teachers ultimately stopped using the system in their classrooms for three main reasons. One was that late in their 5-year use period, the school district shifted to a new curriculum, and teachers needed to drop the curriculum that came along with the ITS. So during this period, they found it increasingly challenging to align the school's new math curriculum with the content of the intelligent tutor. But there was no convenient way for teachers to customize the system's content to better align with this curriculum. Second, although the ITS generated detailed reports about students' progress and performance within the software, teachers noted that these reports did not provide guidance on how to fairly and accurately assign letter grades to students based on the data, which was challenging for teachers given that these systems are designed to allow each student to work at their own pace. So teachers at this school actually felt the need to band together in regular meetings to formulate their own fairly nuanced grading scheme based on informal observations while walking around the classroom. But in practice, this could be quite time-consuming to implement and maintain. And in addition, teachers highlighted that in cases where students seemed to be progressing more slowly than others, it was difficult to distinguish between students engaged in productive versus unproductive struggle, since it was generally easier for teachers to keep the whole class relatively synchronized. And since teachers had no way to know whether a slow student was likely to catch up with the rest of the class, they would generally default to overriding the ITS's built-in mastery learning when a student fell behind by pushing students ahead in the curriculum before they'd achieved mastery. And it's worth noting that teachers had a suspicion that this practice of overriding mastery learning might be harmful to students, and some recent research provides some support to this claim. Finally, related to the previous point on actionability, after using ITSs in their classrooms for 5 years, the teachers were of the belief that ITSs are particularly susceptible to gaming the system or cheating. However, they found that the reports provided by the system did not provide any support in detecting these student behaviors, noting that it can be very difficult to catch gaming the system by eye in even moderately sized classrooms. So despite all of these challenges, teachers still emphasized that they'd used the intelligent tutoring system for many years because they believed the personalized immediate feedback it provided to students was very valuable for their learning. Our interviewed teachers didn't question the instructional effectiveness of ITSs, as we in the ITS community often focus on, but rather highlighted challenges they faced as teachers in orchestrating ITS classrooms. So we next wanted to start getting a better sense of teachers' particular desires for real-time analytics in these classrooms, and to identify opportunities for intelligent tutors to better meet the needs underlying these desires. So we met separately with 5 middle school math teachers and asked them, if you could have any superpowers you wanted to help you do your job, what would they be? And we asked the question this way to encourage teachers to talk freely about their needs without being constrained to those for which they believe a technological solution is currently possible, since we observed a lot of fixation in our early interviews. To reduce bias, we first phrased this question very broadly, but later narrowed focus to superpowers they'd find useful specifically during lab sessions. In each interview, a middle school teacher wrote their desired superpower on index cards and then sorted them by subjective priority. And across teachers, some interesting regularities emerged. All of the interviewed teachers wanted to be able to see students' reasoning processes in order to identify teachable moments and perhaps reroute them when they make wrong turns in reasoning. And all 5 also wanted to know which of their students at any given moment is truly likely to remain stuck on an activity without their help versus students who may currently actually be engaged in productive struggle, so that it would be more beneficial to leave them alone. And finally, one we weren't expecting, teachers wanted to be able to detect students who are close to understanding a concept so that they could jump in at that moment and help them get the rest of the way there. Further probing revealed that although these students may not necessarily need the teacher's help, being there at the moment of the learning is fulfilling to the teacher. In addition, 4 out of 5 teachers wanted to be able to see what misconceptions students currently hold so that they could offer targeted remediation, to be able to temporarily clone themselves to provide personalized guidance to multiple students at a time, to have eyes in the back of their heads in order to catch students who are off task, maybe doing something else in other browser tabs, and finally, to know whether a student is actually putting in the effort so that the teacher can decide between an instructional or a behavioral intervention and know which is more appropriate at the time. In this pairwise comparison matrix, each row shows a superpower that appeared in at least 2 teachers' card sorts, and each column shows a superpower it's being compared against. So the diagonal is blacked out, since they're self-comparisons, and darker shades of red indicate that the row superpower beat the column superpower for more teachers. It's interesting to observe that the ability to see students' reasoning processes tends to be preferred over most other superpowers, and it's worth noting that knowing whether students really know something was not strongly favored by teachers overall, compared with other superpowers, despite estimates of student knowledge being one of the most central analytics provided by existing reporting systems for ITSs. So this card sorting exercise was also an interesting opportunity for reflection for the teachers. As one teacher put it, I really didn't realize how much crap I have to put up with every day, and asked for a souvenir of this photo to show to friends to convince them that in fact, being a middle school math teacher is difficult. To better understand teachers' needs in ITS classrooms, we conducted interviews with 10 middle school math teachers to explore their needs for real-time support tools. Then we organized and synthesized quotes from these interviews in affinity diagramming sessions conducted in pairs, and speed-dated possible futures with 5 teachers using fictional scenarios based around our interview findings. We ultimately plan to use findings from all of this work to inform more direct design explorations with teachers through prototyping sessions. In our interviews, we asked teachers to reflect on their experiences using adaptive educational technologies in the classroom, and to consider how such systems could be better designed. 2 researchers then extracted 301 quotes from about 3 hours of interview data and interpretation sessions, and then hierarchically clustered these quotes into themes in a bottom-up fashion within affinity diagramming sessions. And through our affinity diagramming sessions, 10 high-level design constraints for real-time teacher support tools emerged. So I'll summarize just a few takeaways in this talk, although more detail is provided in the paper. Teachers expressed a desire to be more useful in classroom activities that they perceive to be increasingly dominated by educational technologies, but also to be able to know the impact of their own actions in these contexts. And relatedly, they emphasize that real-time teacher support tools should in some way help teachers improve their own pedagogy, not simply function essentially as a real-time cognitive aid. They emphasize that technology should be customizable and respond to their prior knowledge of their students as well as their instructional priorities, which may be influenced, of course, by institutional constraints and a curriculum they're using that may extend well beyond the software. And finally, they reminded us that technology should enhance the connection between students and teachers, not inadvertently increase the distance. So we wanted to explore these themes further by exploring possible futures with teachers through a method called speed dating. Speed dating is a design method for rapidly exploring new technology concepts, in which participants are presented with a number of alternative futuristic concepts in quick succession, while researchers observe and explore their gut reactions to these possible futures. So we conducted these sessions with 5 middle school teachers who had previously used adaptive learning technologies in their classrooms. And while we confirmed that teachers placed high value on receiving feedback on their own micro-interventions in these settings. As one teacher noted, if I know that I lectured on a particular misconception that students were displaying, and after lecturing at some point the misconceptions begin to go down, then that's a good signal that the teacher's on the right track. But teachers found the idea of gamifying this feedback to be patronizing. As one teacher succinctly put it, I don't need rewards and stickers and points for what I'm doing. Like, that's my job. To explore boundaries, we also presented teachers with a futuristic classroom in which all students wear EEGs, EKGs, and sweat sensors, all while a drone flies overhead to monitor them. And at first, teachers were horrified by this idea. As one teacher put it, "Are you kidding me? This is his heart beating and sweating. Oh my God." But then some surprisingly began to warm up to the idea. One teacher noted that it would be kind of nice to know how nervous students are at any given time because she was a nervous math student back in the day. And another teacher asked, at least half jokingly we think, if it might be possible to apply a small electrical current to students in cases where the support tool indicates that the student is misbehaving. Teachers really like the idea of being able to look at their class and immediately see who needs their help. One teacher characterized a major problem this would address as there always being students who are shy and just don't raise their hands, or perhaps don't know that they need help. And on the flip side, there are other students who raise their hands when they really don't need help. Some teachers perceive that they use talking to the teacher as an opportunity, essentially, to procrastinate on their work. So teachers also noted that relatively minimalistic wearable interfaces, such as augmented reality glasses or smartwatches, would be valuable in keeping their attention on their classroom rather than on an analytics display, while also helping them to prioritize their attention. But despite their desire for support in managing their attention, they generally recoiled at the idea of being told by a computer that they're spending too long with a particular student and that their help is most needed elsewhere. So as one teacher put it, I don't need that to remind me it's time to move on. I know that. As an educator, you know when you've got other kids to deal with. To summarize, I presented the first broad exploration to our knowledge of K-12 teachers' needs for real-time learning analytics in classrooms using intelligent tutoring systems. Although our design work has focused on intelligent tutoring systems in particular, we expect that many of these findings may generalize to a broader class of adaptive educational software used in K-12 classrooms. And while the findings presented here provide a lot of guidance for the next phase of our work, it remains a very challenging design problem to create a teacher support tool that can both serve teachers' needs on the one hand and ultimately enhance student learning on the other. Despite teachers' expertise and rich prior knowledge about their students, we know from the literature on teacher decision-making that it can be imperfect. In fact, recent work from Ritter and others has demonstrated ways in which teachers may currently make decisions in ITS classrooms at scale that harm students' learning in these settings. So a major ongoing challenge lies in deciding what cognitive tasks, in particular, a teacher support tool should support, and finding the right balance between merely enhancing teachers' awareness in the classroom and more directly attempting to support their decision-making. All right, thank you.
So you had mentioned that there's difficulty in distinguishing between productive and unproductive struggle, and you've highlighted that as one of your findings. So do you have some thoughts about how you might go about distinguishing those? Because it seems like a very, very hard problem.
Yeah, and I know we're not alone in facing that problem. So not from our group directly, though luckily it seems some other groups are working on this right now. I had a discussion with Ryan Baker a few weeks ago, and I know some of the students in his group are currently working on real-time detectors for intelligent tutoring systems that attempt to detect whether a struggle is productive or unproductive.
I was really interested in your observation about instructors wanting to participate in that nudge moment to cross the threshold of comprehension. I'm wondering, so you talked about the gratification on the instructor side for that. I'm wondering if we give that moment to an ITS, is there an opportunity cost, do you think, around deepening the relationship between instructor and learner? I'm wondering, another way, what's the learner benefit, if there's any, on having the instructor manage or curate that moment of comprehension?
It's not clear we have evidence that there's a learner benefit of facilitating that moment. I'm not going to rule it out, that there could be some increase in rapport, for example, which in some cases could be beneficial. But it did seem that this one superpower was really something that was more for the teacher.
So by their design, intelligent tutoring systems often target very narrowly defined skills. Did the teachers express an interest in knowing about more kind of higher order thought processes, and if not, do you think maybe they were primed by the sort of things the tutoring system was after?
They were interested. I think that's actually part of what they started to try to get at with the top superpower that they wanted, which was seeing students' reasoning processes. They were really interested in conceptual knowledge in addition to procedural knowledge, despite these tutoring systems, at least the ones they're familiar with, largely focusing more on the procedural side.
So thanks for the interesting talk. What I was wondering about is you sort of have the assumption that there is a best way of interacting with your students. So you seem to have an ideal model of which students to help in a classroom, which is always, it's really hard to optimize that because there's an efficiency perspective, but there's also a lot of ethics involved. Which students are you going to help? Are you optimizing the strong ones? Are you helping the poor ones? So do you have any thoughts on how that would be dealt with in the system?
So, since this was a design study where we temporarily, for the first time in my life in fact, set aside technical challenges and considerations of what's feasible, I'd say this is where we really run into that issue, and we're finding this in our own work now, of how much to attempt to guide teacher decision-making versus just increase their awareness and allow more flexibility for them to make their own decisions. So even assuming that we did have that optimal model, you're right that there would be some ethical, well, approximately optimal, some ethical challenges involved in suggesting to teachers that this is actually going to be the best thing for their students.
Do you have a list of which tutoring systems you evaluated?
So different teachers had used different tutoring systems. I do have a range of tutoring systems they used, though. Some Carnegie Learning systems, assessments, although only one teacher had previously used assessments. The vast majority of these were cognitive tutors, as well as some tutors developed at Carnegie Mellon over the years.
Can the system monitor the student activity after the classroom? I mean,
Outside of the classroom?
outside, yeah. I mean, if the teacher gives some exercise to the students after the classroom, then assignment or something.
That's something teachers never really brought up. The idea of using ITSs for homework. And this may, in fact, be because most of the teachers that we worked with had used systems that don't, at the time they'd used them at least, didn't have homework components.
Yeah, because maybe the intelligent tutoring system is suitable.
This can be the substitute
Suitable
when the teacher's not available.
After the classroom or the personal learning environment.
Yeah, so
to guide the learning.
So that's
comment.
Definitely, yeah, this study focused pretty heavily on a particular use case for these teachers who had used intelligent tutoring systems as a core part of their instruction, sometimes 2 to 3 days out of the week, depending on the school.
Yeah. And this, I mean, if the system can...
Could we ask you to talk through the microphone, because nobody can hear what you're...
So, what's the it's time for the...
Oh, all right.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.